Today, I was going to hand out the first drawing assignment. I'm going to push that back one day. You're not getting it until tomorrow. So you have today to work architectural. That's kind of debating that over the week, and I think there's plenty of work to do on that. And certainly it's a worthwhile deal. So I'll give you another day in class to work on that. You are going to get your first assignment on tomorrow, Tuesday. And we're going to work on site plans for the rest of the week and then stay in the text till Friday. I'm planning right now on Friday being a field day, at least through the morning hours. And what we're going to do is head out to Filer and gather our initial data for our final project. Now with that, there is quite a bit of work that's been done before, and I mentioned the research and the maps that you have available to you in an office before you go. And so on Thursday, I will precursor that trip and give you some information on thoughts and ideas that have already come out of that project. So we'll be prepared for it when we head out to the field. What we'll be looking for there is real-time data, accuracy, these types of things. So just kind of keep that in your schedule. Is there anything club-wise that I need to be aware of? Missy, do you know of?
Oh, well, we were going to talk about David. So,
Okay.
I mean, you know maybe.
Yes, I do. That's the only thing?
I think so.
Okay, nothing that takes class time away. I did hear kind of a talk that we were going to look at redoing the trail before the end of the semester. Let's try and get that on the calendar. Who's doing that?
Sean and Cheryl.
Sean and Cheryl, okay. Maybe if you could come to the club and get something we can put on the calendar for that, so we know when it is and can schedule it in. Because we will have to schedule with maintenance on that also. I think that's it for the schedule, per se. Any questions? Okay. Lesson 2 is really a reference section of your text. And it's something that I hope you're using on a regular basis. And in fact, whenever I'm doing one of these maps, I always pull this sheet out. And I got a couple links on my computer I do also to check that I have gone through what's on here. Now, in essence, what it's going to talk about is when do we abbreviate, when we use symbols for some type of object. Okay, and there's some guidelines you want to follow as you build it. It's a pretty extensive list that we've got copied in this text, but don't think it's all inclusive. It will not have every single thing in there. We do have to get a little inventive on it, and when we do that, we back up to some of the protocols that go with a symbol. And I want to kind of spend most of my time talking about those protocols. So as you come in, of course, we've got this, and you should be kind of familiar with this. This abbreviation symbol is built for the civil industry. Okay, so it is slightly different than the abbreviation that you have in the Bertolini text. I think it's Appendix A1 through A10 that we've been using all year. So please do abbreviate. Your maps are going to get very, very busy. So the more abbreviation you can give, the better. And just as a quick example, I'm going to go back to the very first map we talked about in the previous section. Okay. This one here. I mean, this has got tons of symbology on it. And it's a pretty busy map as it is. Okay. Can you imagine if we didn't have symbology and we tried to actually put things like the thickness of a highway or where a bridge went and tried to draw it in? It'd be black smudges on here. Okay, so we use a lot of symbology and abbreviation for this. Now, if you look through this, so please check this when you're doing a drawing. Basically, you'll go through, put all your dimensions, all your multiliters, and then I go back through those multiliters and confirm them against here. Because if I'm saying something like concrete bridge, do I need to write out concrete bridge? What would I write? Okay, well, you can make that note a quarter of the length of it is if you just jumped into here and you say, well, what's the abbreviation for concrete? Does anybody know that one off the top of their head?
CONC.
Yeah, because that one's used a lot, right? So we kind of got that one memorized, CONC. But what's bridge?
BR.
Okay. So we've now taken something from 12, 13 characters down to 6. And you have the size that it requires to be on the drawing. Now, anything taken off of these lists does not have to be defined on the drawing. Okay, it is a standard abbreviation. Okay, so you don't have to say, if I'm using BR, you don't have to go and make a legend and tell them BR is equal to bridge. Okay? But you don't have to call it out. You can just flat use it right off the bat. Okay? If you would turn to about page 4, and you're going to see a sheet that's got at the bottom half of it, factors that determine the usage of an abbreviation. So here's kind of some basic things that you want to keep in mind when you're doing an abbreviation. Use an abbreviation when necessary to save time and space. How many of you can type 60, 70 words a minute? And have an accuracy over 90%. Maybe I ought to put that quantifier in there. Because I could sure type 90 words a minute, but maybe 2 of them are spelled right. And typically drafters are terrible spellers. Why? Because we use so many shortcuts that we're used to plunking, right? We're running the mouse with our right hand if we're right-handed, the keyboard with our left, just the opposite if we're the lefties. And so that kind of ruins some of your typing skills that you get. In fact, one constant thing that I get is I used to actually type quite a bit, got pretty good at it, but now I always get my hands in the wrong spot on the keyboard because I'm now used to running the mouse and everything versus the more technical drawing type of modes. But save time and space. And really, I would think the thing you're really going to see here is going to save space on your drawing, and that's the big thing. Okay? The time's a secondary factor. We need to make our drawings clear. And how do you do it? Get all that verbiage off of it as much as you can. B, only use an abbreviation when the meaning is unquestionably clear to the intended reader. Okay. So certainly if we've got a long word that we're using time and time again, and it's in the drawing set, and it is not in our standard abbreviations, we need to spell it out. And we'll probably have a cover sheet somewhere and we'll say, this word will be used this. And use basically the same protocol you would on a typed drawing, where we would then say, this is going to be it. So if I'm using something really long, like, I don't know, best practices. We use that all the time. It might even be in here as one. I haven't done one since I left mining. But we use that all the time. It's a long word. But we ended up using BP for it, but we would have to put it on our drawings because it was not the standard BP. In fact, what is BP on this? Let's look that one up. I'm pretty sure there is a BP in here. No, it's not on this one. I don't see one. So you may have to go ahead and do that, but if you make that one little note on a cover sheet, then you don't have to do it anymore. If you are going to short something, use the standard. Okay? Don't use the one you make up. Okay? That little note up there, the same thing we said back in drafting 131 and 132. If in doubt, spell it out, right? Okay? Because it's got to be clear. All right, anything else on abbreviations? You folks how many of you looked through those abbreviation symbols? Okay, you are? Are you finding it useful, like on the section drawings? When you start doing elevations and section drawings where you have to, it's almost all multi-liters, it's almost no linear dimensions, right? You're calling out materials. I hope you are, because you're going to save yourself a ton of work if you do.
But it is okay for you, like, if there had been something else for BP, it sort of overrides that?
Yes. When you're talking, and keep in mind, we're talking large construction sets. And that's what your general sheets are for. One of the last days of architectural, we covered the different drawing types, where general was a 0 drawing type. Architecturals are, 2s. Civils are 1s. And then you had also the floors that it occurred on. But the general drawing General pages are typically the first 2 or 3 in a drawing set, and that one does it right there. That's kind of why I leave that one out. It's got most of everything in it. If you look on there, there is an abbreviation sheet, okay, that's on there, where it says this means this throughout the drawing set. And that, now if it's a standard, we don't need to put it on there. Many times they do.
So isn't the abbreviations kind of like a legend too? 'Cause like on my plug, it said abbreviations on it, on the ones I have my own. It's exactly like it calls out everything that's being used.
Yeah, in essence, it is a legend, right? It's a legend for the words. And most times we think of legends for the symbols, but it certainly can be used for the words.
So instead of putting our legend with our floor plan, can we move that to like the front?
Yeah, typically they're on the first sheet or
Yeah.
two.
We have it with our floor plan.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, then let's look at some of the symbols. What are they used for? Represent the location identity of land features. They're too large to show on the map. Keep information on the map to a minimum and avoid cluttering. Now, this is very important, and it is very much the case. The scale of the map dictates your symbology. The scale of your map dictates the symbology. As a quick example of why that is, if you look down right below here, they start running through the symbols. Where you'd look at a principal highway or a hard surface would be a solid, thick black line. Now, that works great on a map that's at 1 to 50,000 or 1 to 20,000. And again, I'll just go right back to that very first map that we looked at last week. So here, you have a bunch of roads where they followed that symbology. Where here's that thick black line that we're talking about right here. That's a road. Now, this is a map that's showing almost parts of a state. Now, does that scale or that symbol work when I get down to a cadastral map type of look, which is this one? Okay. Remember, a cadastral is a group of properties. No, we abandoned that symbology because we've got enough room on here to draw the real street in. So you're going to kind of keep in mind what scale you are at and how you are going to see these land features when you're doing symbols. They will change based on the scale. Now there is, I do want to throw one note on here, the bottom one. Variations will be found on older maps. Back when we were hand drafting, and that's where many of these civil drawings come from, is hand drafting. As we did a ton of infrastructure in this country between the 18s and now, 1800s I mean, a ton. And in fact, many of you that worked in this area, you're going to be working with old maps on onion skin that are pulled out of archives. You know, Twin Falls Canal Company, when they built all of that infrastructure, did they have computers? No, in fact, I have no idea how they built all that stuff with horse and buggy and shovels. Pretty major undertaking. All their drawings are hand done on vellum. Their symbology is all over the place because it would depend on which office it came out of. In those days, we had stickies. You know, as sticky is, it's kind of like you guys buy these little emoji things, or you got them on your phone. But remember when you could buy them and peel them and stick them? Well, we would buy sheets of details and symbols from a civil company, and then we would just peel it off and put our symbols on, instead of redrawing everything. But if somebody was out of a symbol, what'd they do? They kind of winged it to get the thing done. Okay? So we've got a bunch of those back there. In fact, those subdivision plats over there that I've left out on the other side of the gate, many of those are much older, and you're going to see the symbology vary a little bit in between them also. Okay? So anyway, these are your lists. By the way, I put a link on the Drafting Google Classroom that has a up-to-date map symbology list that's right off of USGS. Okay. So you're welcome to take that, download it, and look at it, but it's updated for current. Now again, I would come through here and look at this. Now this is broke into sections. Okay? So this thing's going to start with topographical map symbols. So if I'm getting ready to describe something, and many times in today's world where we're using pictures, we don't have as much of this symbology. It's more like you're digging information off of old stuff and what does it mean. But it's going to start with all the topo stuff. Okay? And that's going to go till about the 4th page. You'll see it's got a big revision block. Here's where it kind of switches. There's a revision block on the top. It's like 3 or 4 pages down the road. Here we're getting into our boundary symbols. Boundaries, again, they kind of come in here like the railroad stuff, fencing. We have different symbols for a barbed wire fence versus a wood fence versus a standard wire fence to describe all this so we don't end up having to label it all. Yes, we're going to have some fencing to deal with on our final project. Now, let's look at fencing real quick. I can tell you right now, the fence we're going to deal with is chain link. Can you find chain link on here? Or what would we use to describe a chain link fence?
Probably the first one that says fits in general.
What's that, Gabe?
Probably the first one that says fits in general, and then call it out for the chain.
Okay, board fence or fence in general. That's one thought. Any other thoughts on it? Yeah, Devin?
Smooth wire fence?
Okay. Smooth wire is probably closer because again, we got that, but now we got our little metal poles in here. Like a chain link is done. Usually there's a metal pole every 6 to 8 feet. Yes, Cheryl?
Well, if you took a smooth wire fence and then added a circle in the middle of each one where it was solid, and then circle, and then you called it out in the legend.
This is the one I would use right here. And I would put it in the legend and I would call it out as a chain link fence, 6 feet high or something of that nature, whatever the height was. And I don't know if you can see that, Cheryl, there are circles in there just like you said for the posts.
I was just saying if you added a little bit more.
More detail.
Yeah, and you may, well, we actually, in the summer, we go through a class called Customizing AutoCAD, and I teach you how to do your own line types so that they're automatic. Now, if you need to make a line type, like something like one on here that's real common that you don't have this line type available to you in CAD. Okay, and that's a real common fence, right? Barbed wire. How many of us hated that fence growing up? We cut the heck out of you, right? I got scars from those fences to this day. Now, how we build that is generally, right now, what you're going to have to do is draw a long line. You're going to put an X in there with M text, and you're going to use the background mask on it. Okay? So that it looks like this. And then you just copy this X through the line at set intervals to create that line. But whenever you move or edit that line, now you got to remember this text is not affiliated with the line, so you're dealing with a bunch of M text units and one line. That's generally how you're going to do those until you get the knowledge to create your own. If anybody wants to do an extra credit lecture, I would be happy to train you on it and give you the floor, and you can teach the class how to do that if you want to do it sooner than that. Okay, so you can start with these that are as close as you can get, and if you do need to add something to them, you do. You know, a real common thing is to add some text in there. So like Cheryl mentioned on the smooth wire fence where I've got these little dots that come up that represent my first fence post. Could I make a line and put CL in it for chain link and kind of use the same deal? Maybe take this line and enhance it and put an occasional CL like every 20 feet or so. Certainly. You can do whatever you need to get the story over, you just need to make sure you tell it. So anyway, that's where you run into your boundary features. That goes quite a ways, another 3 or 4 pages. We run into our utilities sheets. So now we're dealing with power poles, power lines, lights, telephone, underground, above ground. Some of these you really see a lot of. Overhead power. Do we see those? Yeah, most of them probably are sitting out your front door, right? Certainly, we're starting to transition to more of this type of a power grid. We're taking a lot of stuff underground in today's world. Don't see near kites hung up in those lines like we used to. Yes?
So, I'm kind of a little confused. Is all this stuff, are these all blocks? Do you have to create these yourself, or can you go and get these to use?
You can actually make AutoCAD do these if you could program.
I mean, they're not in there, they're not.
They're not in there standard.
They're not like an
no.
ABC, I can't go find these somewhere.
No, and
Okay.
what you do though, use, and we're gonna use it here later this year, we're gonna kind of dive into it. You'll see that there is a program on here called Civil 3D.
Mhm.
And there is a much larger symbol set in that drawing. I'm actually gonna pull out a program called Foresight when we start doing our land modeling. And it has a huge library of map symbols. It's a program that's strictly built for map making. So that's what we'll look at. Then additionally, I don't have any of them left from the old room, but there are companies out there that will sell symbology that are add-ons to AutoCAD. They're very cheap, but this would be, a company would purchase this for you. They're like $400 for, 50,000 symbols. If I was doing electrical work, I would buy their electrical symbol thing, and then all my symbols are there. If I was doing plumbing work, I'd buy one for there, spend $400, and then they're all add-ons, you just plunk them in.
But from what I'm saying, I didn't look at anybody's just using plain AutoCAD, there are other different programs, so.
Many times they're using different programs. If you're using AutoCAD, you can buy attached on symbol programs. Now, if you're working for a large company, like maybe somebody in power, they might have drawn them all and made blocks of them, and they're sitting in a block library for you. They might have drawn them all and put them there for you. So you go to there, click it, drag it in, using the design set. Okay, so there's your utility stuff. I think that one goes 2 pages. Then you get into your water, hydrographic. Notice there's a lot of ocean stuff on there. I don't know that you need to pay attention to that if you stay to work in Idaho. I don't know that we have a lot of tidal floods. Okay, but certainly if you move. Then you get into geology. Your geologic symbols. So strike and dip are 2 popular ones you see on a lot of maps. Strike and dip maps earthquakes. And so it's the bedding of the soil. That goes on for a couple pages. And I want to stop on this page for a second. It's kind of the last one of our real symbols. North arrows. I kind of mentioned this before, but not many people took me up on it. This is a way drafters sign a drawing. It's with the north arrow. Because many times all you do, you got it drawn by and you got 2 little initials there. Nobody knows that. And it's kind of hard to see. Most drafters will have their own north arrow that they use, and they put it on a plan drawing whenever they use it. So the second they see that next to the title block, they know who did it in their office. I would like you folks to spend a few minutes and try and come up with your own north arrow. That one out of AutoCAD is pretty darn blasé off the design center, right? One that looks like this, and it's got the north, or I think this part's an arrow, right? Something like that. out of the design center. I can't remember exactly how it looks.
Yeah.
You cannot use that anymore. Design your own north arrow. Now, I would recommend that when you make that north arrow up, make it approximately 1 unit high and 1 unit wide. Make it so it's easy to read. You can have multiple compasses on it like this. You can have just north on it. Or you could have maybe the 4 points, kind of like this one down here. But make it about 1 unit. And just adjust your text and everything. Why would you make it 1 unit high?
You can scale it easy.
Yeah. So when you got a drawing that's got a DSF of 20, you just take it and scale it by 20. So make it 1 unit. If you can't get it to there, make it a unit 10 units. Something that's an easy number for you to work with. Yes, Majid?
So for the letter N, we can stick just with one style of text, or we can use another style?
You can use whatever you want. It's your north arrow. Make it easy to read. Okay. And be ready to paste it on a drawing. Kind of like when we did our custom arrowheads. I don't want to tell you how to do it. I think just do it. If you want me to look it over and say, hey, I think this makes sense, it's easy to read, I'd be happy to do that. Or I'll wait for your first drawings to come out. But yes, Majid, you can use whatever font you wish. You can even draw the N. You don't have to use a font. Or an E or a W or an S. And then hatch. Do some hatching if you want to, stuff of that nature. All right, next sheet. I want to go through this. Drawing rules. First one, should be easy to read and understand, obviously. Okay. This is kind of hard to do based on different scales. Hard to do. Because how many of you on your architectural stuff, you print it off and you see a hatch pattern and it's a black blob? Yeah, happened to me many times. Yeah, you got to pay attention to